debated in the Senate. His biggest win could be in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill of hiking spending and huge tax cuts. Does this fawning of President Trump actually work? Well, not according to the mooch. Anthony Scaramucci was Trump's communications director for a tumultuous 11 days and is back on LBC this afternoon taking your calls and your questions. Great to see you, Anthony. Thank you very much indeed for coming back on. Does this fawning of him work that we saw Mark Rutte do?
I don't think the fawning works. No, I think it's embarrassing, and I think he loves it in not the way they think he loves it. They think, oh, let me flatter him, and flattery will get me anywhere with him. That's not what he loves. He loves the fact that you're on bended knee and a supplicant of his. In fact, he derides you for it. And the thing he did to the NATO General Secretary was he took a screenshot of the text and put it out on his Truth Social to embarrass him, and that's exactly what he did. And so remember, a good part of the whole Trump thing is the humiliation ritual. It's very important for him to demean the people around him. It's like insecurity power struggle. So no, he doesn't. Again, I submit that Carney has done the best job, and Carney just went, rather than combating him, they said they're going to stop the trade talks with Canada because of the digital services tax on the technology companies. And Carney looked at that with his team and said, okay, let's give them that point. Took it back. No drama, no fanfare, no humiliation ritual. So to me, that's what I would do. And I think these guys are embarrassing themselves. And by the way, one last thing, because this is what happens with cognitive dissonance. If you're Mark Rutte, you're telling your friends, well, I need to do this, and I'm the Trump whisperer, and all this stuff. But you're not, actually. You're embarrassing yourself, and he thinks lesser of you. Trust me. Look, remember, I was in the White House for 11 days, but I was on the I've known him for 20 years, and I was on the campaign for 11 months. So I know the hanging up the phone call and him looking around in the plane saying, can you believe this guy? This guy thinks his supplicancy to me, because I'm not going to use the word that I want because we're on live show, but this obsequiousness, he thinks this is winning me over. Ha ha.
So that's so interesting to me, because the glib interpretation is that Trump is such a buffoon that this stuff works. The court, squeaking up to him, calling him daddy, and taking a note from the king and handing him whatever. That all of that appeals to him, that he likes it, and therefore it buys you favor.
But that's different, though, Tom. The king thing is different. See, that's different. So Starmer's actually number two. Starmer's the silver medalist in the Trump relationship.
You think that was good? He wouldn't have. He wouldn't have said. So the door shuts on Keir Starmer. He wouldn't have gone round to his team and gone, God, that guy, what a buffoon.
No, because he's figured out that Trump has a Scottish mom. He's an Anglophile. He likes the pomp and circumstance associated with the royal family. He's a monarchist, and so Starmer, that was a diplomatic tool. So that's different. He'd have
respected that, you think?
Yeah, there's a level of obsequiousness to that, but it's not layered with the daddy and the. I mean, listen, man. Right. On my podcast, I was fake throwing up, reading the Mark Rutte. I mean, I was like, I was finding the vomit bag on the airplane, right? I mean, come on, it's ridiculous, right? But the Prime Minister Starmer different. Starmer's like, this guy likes the pomp and circumstance. He loved going to Buckingham Palace. Let me make sure that the king takes care of him the same way Queen Elizabeth did. That's different, in my opinion.
Yeah. 03456060973 is the number. Anthony very kindly agreed to take calls till 5 o'clock on all things Americana, but there'll be I suspect, some read across from some of the events in the UK to the US as well. Let's go to Joe, first of all, in North Ayrshire. Joe, you're on with the mooch. Your question.
Oh, I'm privileged to speak to the mooch. Thank you, mooch, for all you're doing. This is slightly tongue-in-cheek, but there are social media memes going around saying that because of Trump's immigrant wives, his own children would actually be party to this law that he's brought out about birthright. And I just wondered if you could kind of firm up, whether there's any truth in that because his ex-wives, his wives, ex-wives, whatever, weren't US citizens when they had Trump's children, would his children theoretically fall under this new law?
Good question. So just take us back to that Supreme
it's a
Court.
great question. I've actually looked at this, so it's a good question. But I didn't hear her first name, by the way. I apologize.
Joe. It was Joe.
Joe. So it's a really good question. So I've actually looked at this. I'll put my legal beagle hat on and tell you that it would be a technical yes, that it would fall under that, and I think that's an issue. And so there's some irony there, right? Because and there's also a little bit of hypocrisy because a lot of people have come in as immigrants. I don't think the proposed law that they're suggesting actually comes into place. That would be one of the reasons why it would come into place. But I think what is at issue is, will birthright citizenship hold? Now, the court was very vague on birthright citizenship. What the court was trying to do is saying that you may not like the president and you may think the president's acting outside of his authority, but you also then can't check him by acting outside of your authority. Okay, so that was a judicial restraint decision. They left the birthright citizenship issue off the table for now. And I'm going to make a prediction here on this show that birthright citizenship thing never really manifests, that we get to 2028 and Trump is out of office and birthright citizenship is still in place in the U.S. But Joe is correct. If they did go into that situation, you would run the risk that a Democrat could get into office and say, okay, well, we're going to apply this mechanism and these rules to Trump's own family. So I don't see it happening for that and many other reasons.
But that's, Joe, great question, by the way. And this all comes out of the Supreme Court ruling on Friday that Trump hailed as a massive win, which I guess in one sense, Anthony, shows the power of the Trump presidency, that because it's packed, the Supreme Court is packed with Republicans, he can win there quite regularly too.
He's lost there, though, too. He's won some and he's lost some. That's why they're critical of some of the picks that Trump put in. I mean, the court has done a reasonably good job, frankly. You know, remember, I've long studied the court, took constitutional law in law school. They've done a reasonably good job. What happens is the left-wing media will go crazy if they side with Trump, but if you actually read the decisions are pretty measured. Even the immunity decision, I said this on the Rest is Politics show, the immunity decision is fairly measured. It gets exaggerated in the media. You know, he can get put in jail. There are certain things that he's doing. He could end up in jail. There is a reason why at Ladbrokes and other places there's a 15% chance he gets ousted from the presidency because he's doing things. He's breaking some rules. You have an emoluments issue with him. He's made several $1 billion since the start of the presidency for himself and his family. There are things that he's doing that are, outside of the norms of the presidency. But I think the court has, in general, done a pretty good job. Generally.
03456060973 is the number to get your call through to the Mooch on LBC this hour. You can also watch us. We're streaming live on the LBC app, so you can see Mr. Scaramucci. What guitar is that behind you?
I'm glad I dressed up for you. By the way, I was a little nervous at the way. And I'm looking at you with this.
I've got my arrangement going on. I thought I haven't got.
Is that like a Marks and Spencer polo?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's exactly that. Actually, it's next.
Okay, yeah, yes, I like it.
What's the guitar behind you? What's that?
So that's actually from One Republic. I don't know if you know that band, an American band.
Really?
So I hire these bands for my conferences. So I've hired Maroon 5, One Republic. I got a lot of guitars in the. I don't play the guitar, but I got a lot of signed guitars. You know, when you pay a lot of money for a band to play at a private event, they give you a guitar.
You better get something out of it more than just the music.
There's a very expensive guitar behind me.
Yeah, I bet. Hey, on a musical theme, can I bring you some breaking news? This from the Deputy Secretary of the State Department in relation to a band called Bob Vylan, who you might have heard have caused a bit of a stir this side of the Atlantic. They were, Bob Vylan, due to play in America. I can bring you this from the Deputy Secretary of the State Department, who says that they have revoked the US visas for the members of the Bob Vylan band in light of their hateful tirade at Glastonbury, including leading the crowd in death chants. Christopher Landau says foreigners who glorify violence and hatred are not welcome visitors to our country. Do you think a Biden presidency would have stopped these guys from coming?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that's a governmental overreach. But that's a big flex in the culture war. Listen, I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't like the remarks that are being made. I think you're taking a political issue and you're conflating it with anti-Semitism. If you don't like the government of Israel, you don't like what the government is doing, don't cross over the bridge into anti-Semitism. Make the argument related to policy. Make the argument related to the inhumanity of war. I mean, war is ultimately inhumane. It's not, there's war crimes going on in the Ukraine, and I'm sure that there are things going on that are regrettable in Gaza, but don't go over the line into anti-Semitism. Having said that, I think that America is a free society, and I don't think we should be punishing people. We can denounce them and so forth, but I don't think revoking the visa is the right thing. If anything, it just creates more bitterness and a greater divide. But remember something about this administration. They're fighting a culture war. And so that plays to their base. When they do things like that, when they advertise that there are transgender athletes playing in women's sports, even though there's a very small group of them, when they do that, it ignites Trump's base. And that's something that the base would find satisfying. But again, it's breaking the norms of a system that has made this country fairly free, very productive economically, very innovative, and frankly aspirational. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I take you to my neighborhood, Tom, where I grew up. I've been able to do some pretty exceptional things because I live in America, and I think when they do stuff like this, they're curbing that, and I don't like it. By the way, I denounce the anti-Semitism. I also think there's a balance that you have to have as a leader.
You wouldn't be hiring this band for your private event?
No, I would definitely not have a signed guitar from that band, and they should probably issue an apology.
03456060973. Kieran's in Bracknell. Kieran, you're through to the Mooch.
Thank you. Mr. Scaramucci, thank you for the... Will Daddy take the opportunity to step in and denounce all these children fighting in the playground, to reinvigorate his Nobel Peace Prize by passing an executive order that United States will step in because of what happened in the last 4 days with the starvation children and whatnot, that he would step in to do the peacekeeping thing and thereby reinvigorating his Nobel Peace Prize effort.
This is in the Middle East, Kieran, you're talking about specifically, yeah?
It's a really...
I'm talking about Gaza.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I know from, my sources, people I'm still pretty close to, that's on the table. I think what's also on the table, what concerns Donald Trump, and he's put this out on Truth Social, is the... I'm trying to measure my words here, but I believe there are some criminal indictments against Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yep.
And if I'm wrong about that, Tom, I want to
No. He was expected to go to court.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm factually accurate. If not, I'll retract the statement. But I think the president is worried about those because I think whatever the ups and downs that he's had with Bibi Netanyahu, he likes that relationship, and he wants Bibi to be cut a pass or a get-out-of-jail-free card. And so what's at issue, what he's balancing, he definitely wants that Nobel Peace Prize. He's a vainglorious guy, but he doesn't want to put the peacekeepers in place because he thinks it may hurt Bibi politically right now in his own country. So I think step one would be how can he help Bibi, and then step two would be that other idea that you're bringing up, which I know they're talking about.
Just on the Trump...
But he definitely wants the Peace Prize, guys. And I find it funny because, he competes with President Obama. It's 10 years later, but he's still competing with him. I
want to talk about Iran in a minute. Just on what Trump said about Netanyahu. On Friday, he posted, "It is, quote, insanity doing what the out-of-control prosecutors are doing to Bibi Netanyahu." I am going to assume, Anthony, and maybe it's unfair of me to assume this, but I'm going to assume Trump doesn't actually read all doesn't know the detail of what's actually happening to Netanyahu, does he? Or does he?
No, but he's relating it to himself, right? So Trump's whole big message is the warfare through the lawfare, right? Trump is basically saying, if you remember this time last year, Trump was about 15 miles south of me at a New York City criminal court
Yes.
where he was indicted and he was eventually convicted on 34 criminal counts. Now, I always make this argument because you can study this in history. When you're going, even if you have malevolent political figures, when you're going after them politically, you can actually galvanize support around them. Okay, that would be, and again, I'm not comparing Trump to Hitler, but I'm just giving examples from history. 1924, Hitler goes to jail. He becomes more powerful. Positive people, letters from a Birmingham jail. Martin Luther King Jr. goes to jail. He becomes more powerful. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in a South African jail, he becomes more powerful. So to me, I think what Trump is basically saying there is be careful. You don't want to be in a system, guys, where the political opponents are building jail cells for each other, depending on which party is in and out of power. Even if they're bad guys, I think it hurts the standing of the country, and it puts you down a really bad road. I was not in love with those criminal indictments against Trump last year.
Do you you mentioned the Ladbrokes market in Trump being ousted for the presidency, and you're a money guy. Would you put money on Trump ending up in prison?
No, not prison. Prison, no. I'd say that it's not. It's you're off zero that something bad could happen to him in the presidency because he's doing things. Remember, there's an expression, that the fish thinks from the head down. So if the leader is breaking societal norms and the leader is going after a good grift for himself and his family, it's going to exponentially permeate down chain to the other people working with the leader. And so then all of a sudden you could end up with a really bad outcome. Now, Governor Christie, you guys may or may not remember him, but 12 years ago, his staff decided that they would slow down the traffic coming over the George Washington Bridge to get at one of the local leaders. And so they slowed it down. They manipulated the traffic. They put up cones. And I actually think that cost Chris Christie his future as a political aspirant because, and by the way, I believe Chris. He probably didn't tell them to do that, but they saw his behavior at the top and it gave them license. Okay. And so Trump is creating a culture of grifting. And so that could really tip over into something really bad, which may affect him. Like right now, people think he's impervious, but he may not be in 18 months after the political midterms in November of 2026.
Well, interesting.
So it's not zero, guys. Not zero.
Interesting you mentioned that because John's in Reading with a similar, with a question on a similar line. John, hi, you're through to the Mooch.
Hi there. My question is: do you believe that if Donald Trump or / the Republican Party loses the midterms, Trump will follow everything legally and basically follow the law? And may I add also, there's a mayor race in New York at the moment. Do you seriously believe that Trump, there's been word of it, whether or not he will actually deport him if he becomes mayor?
Yeah. Okay, so I think let's start with that one. I think if Zamdani becomes mayor, I don't think it'll be impossible to deport him. I think that Trump has very good political instincts, and he could threaten that, but I don't think that would ever happen. So I'll start there. When you say follow the law, Trump is always up against the law. He's always on the margin. He goes into the gray zone, and sometimes he goes over the chalk mark outside of the boundaries of the law. So I don't think any of that will change one way or the other. I think what's at real issue are the Democrats. So the Democrats, I think these two questions are very interesting, sir, because they are conjoined in the following way. If the Democrats are listening to what's going on in New York and they're going to lurch into hard left socialism, and again, I'm not defining the socialism in the United States similar to European socialism because they're very different and the United States citizens think of it very differently, but I think that would be a terrible mistake for the Democrats. This is a center-right country, whether people like that or not. That's my 61-year observation. And if they elect this gentleman, he's a socialist, and they take that as a cue to go further to the right, Trump will win the midterm elections. He'll probably gain houses, seats in the House and seats in the Senate. So I think those things are connected. But yeah, no, he's not a law follower, guys. He's a up against the law, stretch the law, push the limits of things, break norms, and trigger people.
On the point of, as you describe it, the sort of the socialism point and where the Democrats go next, I noticed that you put out a tweet, or you quote tweeted a guy called Sean Maguire, who said, "We need more billionaires and fewer communists." And you said, "Amen, the politics of envy, more opportunity and purpose for all. I grew up in a country of aspiration," kind of to the point that you were making earlier, Anthony. But that would be a... if the Democrats saw an open field there, i.e. to say we've got too many people who are far too wealthy, we need to redistribute the money far more evenly, you think that would be a political mistake for them?
Oh, well, I think it would be a grave error. It would also hurt the country. So, I mean, the country... I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't like the unequal opportunity in the country. If there's any socialist bone in my body, I would like a rich country like this to develop a broader, sturdier platform of equal opportunity, meaning if there are kids in urban areas that are not getting nutrition, guys, we have kids in this country, 40% of the elementary school students are saying they're having a hard time in school because they're going to school hungry. Mm. Okay, this is a rich enough country. We should be figuring that out. So I'm about a platform of equal opportunity, but I am not about equal outcomes. We have to have unequal outcomes, incentivized outcomes. If you're going to work harder than me, you deserve to make more than me. If you have a better idea or a better mousetrap than me, you deserve more. I want to get out of the politics of envy, but I think what's happening in the country now is the billionaires have lost their what I would call the noblesse oblige. They've lost their sensibility about taking care of other people. 80 years ago, the very rich in this country got together with the politicians. They came up with the GI Bill. Okay, and this put a lot of poor kids who were in the American military into college. They were able to transition from working class jobs into white collar jobs, and it burgeoned the middle class of America. And so this middle class brand in America has been damaged due to indifference by billionaires. And so the messaging from the socialists is very clear. The billionaires don't care about you. They're trying to become trillionaires. So let's break them down and redistribute the wealth. I think that that's a false promise, and you can look to a lot of countries that have tried that. There's a country 90 miles to the south of us that tried that. It's been a dilapidated mess for 60 years. That's the country of Cuba. So to me, I don't want to go in that direction, but I do believe that we are on the precipice of breaking something if we have this wan indifference to lower and middle income people from the very wealthy. So again, you can have your money, but let's start taking care of more people and giving more people aspirational opportunity in the society. I think that's the message. And let me just give one historical comment. Teddy Roosevelt understood this better than anybody. He was actually a Republican, and he was the father of progressivism. He called it progressivism. He broke up some of the trusts, like the oil companies, some of the banking trusts. He went to the local building people and the tenements. He said that these apartments have to be made better. They can't collapse on each other because you can't take advantage of the poor. And he paved the way for the architecture of the middle class. And so every once in a while, we get robber barons in place that overly flex on the government, and they cause a problem in the society. So we're there now, but going towards socialism would be the wrong answer. The society needs renewal. It needs a re-engineering of the social contract, but I think that would be a leap too far. It would really hurt people.
03456060973 is the number. Anthony Scaramucci, the former White House Director of Communications under President Trump, is here taking calls until 5 o'clock. We haven't even got into Iran yet, which is astonishingly poor from me, given that we've had half an hour of your time, Mr. Mooch. So we'll get into Iran. We'll get into questions of foreign policy in a few moments' time. Plus, of course, the breaking news this afternoon that the band Bob Dylan have been banned from going to the United States. They've had their visas revoked. We'll get into the details of that in a few moments as well. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC, 4:30, news headlines now. Elizabeth Secker.
The BBC says it regrets not pulling the broadcast of rap group Bob Vylan at Glastonbury. It's understood the pair have been dropped by their talent agency after they chanted death to the IDF on stage on Saturday night. Meanwhile, the US State Department has withdrawn their visas ahead of a planned tour. What's thought to be the UK's longest ever unsolved cold case has now been solved with the conviction of a 92-year-old man. Ryland Headley has been found guilty of the rape and murder of grandmother Louise Dunn in her home in Bristol in 1967. It's been confirmed anyone who's currently receiving personal independence payments won't be affected by changes to the eligibility criteria. The Work and Pension Secretary says she's acknowledged real concern among disabled people as she defended watered-down welfare reforms. LBC weather, a warm and sultry night ahead for southern regions with a low of 23 Celsius, but there's drizzle in the north and lows of 11 degrees.
LBC This Morning on Nick Ferrari at Breakfast.
Why would you hire Bob Vylan, this vile duo, who got formed, by the way? 20-minute tirade, I won't read it all to you. Foul language about music executives, bald-headed F-words, C-words, everything else, all and saying, we're live on the BBC, everyone chanting and screaming how hilarious it is. Where was someone to press the kill button? Just pull the plug. There's no conversation to be had here. It's done. It's out. Ridiculous. Why are you so utterly inept or incompetent? When might there be some action?
Nick Ferrari at Breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio, on Global Player, and the new LBC app. Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
4:33 the time. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC, joined by Anthony Scaramucci, the former White House Director of Communications under President Trump. Well, for 11 days, but he was involved with President Trump for a long time before that. Always fascinating to get his thoughts, particularly on where there is crossover between the US and the UK. Certainly that is true of this afternoon. The United States revoking the visas of a band called Bob Vylan following their performance at Glastonbury over the weekend. Natasha Clark is LBC's political editor, joining me live because, Natasha, a statement is coming in the House of Commons, we believe.
Yes, Tom, that's right. In the next sort of few minutes or so, the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy is going to be delivering a statement on what has been happening at Glastonbury and at the highest levels of the BBC over the weekend regarding that very, very controversial performance where you heard death to the IDF, which was being chanted by the act in question. It's obviously, as you'd expect, Tom, provoked a very, very strong response from the government. Within around 24 hours, you had had a statement from Sir Keir Starmer condemning that language. And I understand that the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, was the one that instigated a call to the Directorate General of the BBC on Saturday night as soon as she had seen that performance. So clearly, level of concern at the highest levels of concern of government over this. And we understand that Lisa Nandy will be calling on the BBC to report back to her as soon as possible when she comes and stands up in front of MPs in the next few minutes. The government are concerned about the BBC, the level of editorial guidelines around this. And today the BBC have come out with quite a strong, punchy statement saying that they were wrong not to pull it at the time that it was being streamed live on the BBC. Obviously no longer will be available on the BBC iPlayer, but that the highest levels of government concern that the BBC has been a bit slow to act on this one. And Lisa Nandy, of course, as you'd expect, the Culture Secretary, having lots of conversations with the BBC about this, but she will be calling them in to talk to them at some point about whether she feels that they've done enough to make sure that this will never, ever happen again.
Let's see what their answers are to those questions from the Secretary of State. Natasha, thank you very much indeed. Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. That statement coming in the House of Commons later on this afternoon. We'll talk about it in much more detail after 5. Let's come back to some of the big issues on the table for Donald Trump, particularly relating to the Middle East. Mike's in Beverly. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Anthony. How do you think Trump would react if he made that Iran was still in control of 400k of enriched uranium? Do you think he'd go again or send Israel in, or what would he do?
Did you get that, Anthony? Did you get the question?
It was a little garbled. It was about enriching uranium.
That's right. Would Trump hit Iran again if it turns out their weapons program wasn't as obliterated as he said?
I don't think so. But again, this is the problem with all of this. I think when you work in the White House or you work around this stuff, there's a lot of probabilities and there's a lot of uncertainties. But my best guess is I don't think so. I think Trump hit them once again to support Netanyahu. I think he probably knew that they had cleared out the uranium. And it's not clear to me that if you really think about the balance of powers between Israel and Iran, we know that the Israelis have the bomb. We're saying that the Iranians don't have the bomb. But if they have enriching capabilities or have enriched uranium, it could cause a counterbalance to each other. It may neutral both of them out. So it's not clear to me. What is clear to me, and again, I always try to call balls and strikes with President Trump. Sometimes I'll say things that people feel are praising him. I think he's very bad for our country, but I want to be very fair and call balls and strikes. I don't think he wants to get into a forever war with Iran. I think he was trying to help out Prime Minister Netanyahu by dropping those bombs, but I think he's made it very clear to the Israelis he doesn't want to go any further than that.
Yeah, I thought his comments about, he was very, very cross about the CNN report of an early assessment of the damage or lack thereof of the Iranian nuclear program. He was obviously very angered by that, but he was also incredibly angry with Netanyahu himself, it would seem, when the ceasefire was momentarily broken and he dropped the F-bomb on live television. Are they really as close as all that? I wonder whether trust is low between Trump and Netanyahu, really.
I would say that there's a relationship there. There's a respectful relationship there. They see each other similarities, frankly. I think the real anger that Trump really has, though, is with the truth. Trump wants his narrative to be out there, even if it's not the truth. And so he wants to move you off of the truth into his zip code. This has been very effective for him. There is a personality cult around Donald Trump. It's a very large swath of people in the United States that believe the following mantra: the media lies to them, Trump tells them the truth. Yeah. Even though we could document that Trump is telling thousands of lies, they're going to abide by what the president's saying, and he's the master at that. But the leaking, I think this is the thing that's frustrating to somebody like Donald Trump. The government, what we would call the more permanent government, is leaking on him to weaken that narrative. And that's why they're going to places like CNN with the truth. And so him and Pete Hegseth can have as many theatrical press conferences as they want. You're not going to be able to lie about the truth. The truth is the truth. So it'll be interesting to see how this continues to unfold. But that's one thing the courts have been pretty good on, though, guys. They've more or less protected the press and the freedoms that are associated with it.
I've just seen a tweet or a truth or a social, whatever you call it, from the president saying, "I'm not offering Iran anything, nor am I even talking to them since we totally obliterated, in caps, their nuclear facilities." So that's the end of any talks to try and restrict Iran on enrichment or what have you.
That means a 50% chance he's talking to them.
Yeah,
I'll give it 50%.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, because you don't have to have a Shakespearean decoder ring to understand Donald Trump. When he's protesting like that, that means he's probably talking to them and he wants to send out a signal of misdirection. And so I give it 50-50 on that one.
When you were in the White House, did you know from day to day what was meant to be happening? You had a grid, did you? Of I know you weren't Comm Secretary for very long, but you had a grid of stuff that on Monday we were planning to announce this, on Tuesday we were planning to announce this, on Wednesday we're going to do this. And if you had that, does that just get blown out the water because the president says stuff?
Yeah, but again, I would say that's true for any administration. So I think one of the things that President Bush said to me prior to my arrival in the White House, George W. Bush, he said the problem with the White House is you're planning A, but the world is happening. As a result of which you have to now adjust your plan to the world. So if you add into the mix the uncertainty of what the president's going to be doing, that also complicates the situation. Remember, the
reason
president
wants it is because we, when I worked in government, there was a grid. We had a grid of these are the things that we're going to announce.
There was a grid. Yeah, there was a grid for us. Yep.
And yes, there are world events, and that can knock it on the head. And the press will be asking about this story, that story, the other story. What we didn't have was, in our case, a prime minister or a president who would just tweet something, and then that's it. That's the story. It's all. Everything else is gone. That's frustrating to work with.
I think I would take it a step further. I mean, it's more than just frustrating. I think, but again, you got to see the world the way he sees the world. He wants your attention. He wants you and I at 4:42 Greenwich time talking about him. He wants that, and if he's not getting that, he'll try to find a way to get us to talk about him. He wants to be on the top of the fold of a broadsheet newspaper every single day. And the only way to do that is to think like a reality television show producer. Conflict, melodrama, misdirection, maybe a little bit of violence here or there. And he does that. And by the way, if you get bored with him, he'll try to find a way to get your attention. So and that's very distracting, and there's a reason why the stock market is doing well, because people are like, okay, wait a minute, he's a little worse than he was in term one, but he can't get anything done because of his personality, so we're just going to wait him out. And these companies, I mean, if you're Tim Cook, don't respond. That's the CEO of Apple. Wait him out. You're not going to move your whole manufacturing out of China. It's not going to happen.
Do you know, it's funny you say that, because from contacts of mine who are relatively senior in particular businesses, they've all said to the president, yeah, sure, we'll move our manufacturing to the United States, and know that it's going to cost them tens of billions potentially to do that. They're not going to do it. There's no way they're going to do it.
They're not going to do it. But again, but remember, it's a theater. There's a Kabuki Theater going on, right? As long as you understand the Kabuki Theater, you got to dance in the theater. But you see, the problem with these other leaders is they're letting Trump treat them like B-level actors. And this is another thing. I'm going to compliment Starmer for a second. It's just, again, very objectively, Starmer went in with a game plan that blunted Trump's ability to humiliate him. Carney has decided that he's a co-producer with Trump. He's going to show up with Trump somewhere. He's in his staff and Trump's staff are in agreement in terms of what's going to be said and not said. Rutta, that was a bridge too far for me.
It was so grim.
Dude, calm down. And by the way, you didn't think. Here's the irony, and I feel bad for the guy because he didn't think Trump was going to do that to him, right? He's like, I'm going to send this really obsequious, crazy text to Trump, and that's going to make me look good to Trump. It's going to help me with Trump. And Trump's laughing at him, and then he puts it out on Truth Social to embarrass him. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So it should be a cautionary tale for future leaders.
I want to play you something, actually, that came out of one of the press conferences at NATO, which I thought was a really interesting display of Trumpism and the way in which he engages with people. Play that to you in just a few moments. Theo's in Crouch End first. Theo?
Hello there.
Hi.
So I am a journalist. I have a Substack, Dictators v. Democrats, where I track the war against democracy globally. So I go to Ukraine a lot. And the question that often comes up there is, what is the source of his softness, perceived softness towards Vladimir Putin? And is there any strategic thought behind his policy towards the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or is it all about personal relationships and feelings at the moment?
Well, I mean, the last time I was on Tom's show, I said something and people got mad at me, but I'm just going to be consistent with what I said, which is I think they have compromise on them. And I can't figure out what it is. You could ask somebody like Catherine Belton, who wrote the best-selling book, Putin's People. None of us could figure it out. McMaster couldn't. Kelly couldn't. There's nothing strategic about that. There's no American president that you could sit with that could say that there's a strategic initiative to blaming the Ukraine for the start of the war. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put the preposition "the" in front of it. I'm learning how you guys speak the English language. Yeah, I'm learning how you guys speak the English language better than we do. But
yeah, we'll teach you. Don't worry about it.
Okay, but think about this. Ukraine started the war, and he's going to vote with North Korea and Russia at the UN. What American president would do that? The United States is still 26% of the world's GDP, has the most powerful military in the world, and Trump is a pretty rich guy by anybody's standards. Yeah. But he's kowtowing to a guy who's in a stalemated war with a country that's one-third the size of his. He has a dilapidated military, and he has a failing economy, and the economy has shrunken now where it's below the GDP of Italy. So you tell me what strategic thing an American president would be thinking about as it relates to this narrative. I can't see it. Mm-hmm. And so, again, guys, remember, and I've said this before on my podcast, when the window's open and you hear clippity-clop, it's a horse. It's not a zebra. Don't overthink it. They got him on something. We don't know what it is. But Trump is excruciatingly careful with Vladimir Putin. Just one more quick sentence. He goes to the G7. He leaves abruptly, but when he's there, he puts 3 or 4 sentences together praising Vladimir Putin, excoriating Obama and Trudeau, even though Trudeau wasn't even elected prime minister, excoriating them for, quote-unquote, kicking Russia out of what was the G8. So, listen, you're probably a great journalist, and you go to Ukraine a lot. Maybe you know more about this than me, but I know Trump, they got him on something. He's very cautious.
Did you mentioned H.R. McMaster there, who I think was the National Security Advisor to Trump?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever quietly whisper about this in the corridors of the White House? Did you ever
Not quietly. No, openly.
You were openly talking about whether there was compromise on the
president. Nothing quiet about this. This was an open, what the hell is going on?
Really?
And why?
And nobody could circle around and answer.
Kelly, McMaster, Mattis, Milley.
And they ask questions.
Well, they don't ask questions directly to him, but they look to each other and say, why would he be like this? What are the reasons for this?
Wow.
There's no, I mean, and the notion that they have a PP tape or the notion that he likes strong men and all this sort of stuff is nonsensical, guys. It doesn't fit the keyhole. It's not the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle.
Do you think that they asked their various institutions, whether it's the FBI, the National Security Apparatus, to have a look? Do you think the civil service in the United States might know?
Maybe, but I think it's tough. I think it's tough on that, right? Because again, you don't, he's the elected leader of the country. This is a republic, but is a representative republic. He was democratically elected the leader of the country. So I think there's only so far you want to go from that perspective as well.
Marita, I'm going to come to your call in a second. Let me bring you some breaking news first. You're listening to LBC 449 The Time. We get this from Avon and Somerset Police. who say that video footage and audio from Bob Vylan and Kneecap's performances at Glastonbury Festival on Saturday are being reviewed. Following the completion of that assessment process, the police have decided further inquiries are required and a criminal investigation is now being undertaken. They say a senior detective has been appointed to lead this investigation. This has been recorded as a public order incident at this time while our inquiries are at an early stage. The investigation will be evidence-led and will closely consider all appropriate legislation, including relating to hate crimes. We have received a large amount of contact in relation to these events, they say, from people across the world and recognise the strength of public feeling. They say there is absolutely no place in society for hate. So, criminal investigation now underway into performances by Bob Vylan and by Kneecap at Glastonbury Festival on Saturday. Marita's been waiting patiently to get to the mooch. Hi, Marita.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much.
Good. So my question to Anthony is about the new Genius bill that passed through the Senate a couple of weeks ago. And I just wanted to know, like, realistically, how long does he think it's going to be before we are actually all dealing with digital currencies?
Okay, so the Genius bill, for those people that may not know what it is, if you don't mind, I'll just 30 seconds. It's just we passed legislation to provide more clarity related to digital assets and stable coins, which are basically dollars that are on the blockchain that we can transfer to each other without a third party's permission. And so there's a lot of regulation embedded in that, which I think provides great clarity. There's a company called Circle in the United States. It's a large stablecoin issuer. It's done well as a result of that legislation. I think you're 2, possibly 3 years away in the United States where you'll actually have a digital dollar in your wallet on your phone that you'll be able to use in lieu of a credit card. So said differently, let's say you go to a restaurant and you're going to pay them with a digital dollar, you'll save the restaurant the 3 to 3.5% service charge on the credit card. And that may show up in better food, it may show up in lesser prices, but we have about $7 trillion globally that we're spending to verify transactions. Those are credit card fees, wire surcharges, lawyers and accountants observing things when they're transferring either properties or businesses or buildings, et cetera. But over the blockchain, you could truncate that, alleviate that, and I think this will unleash a lot of economic innovation. So probably 2 to 3 years, but that's the answer to that one.
Marita, I know you're hot on this topic.
Yes, I do like my cryptos and blockchains.
Well, you've got the right guy. You've got the right guy.
I think it's good that they've done it, and it's a bipartisan bill as well in America, which is maybe something that the UK government could take a lesson from, because I still haven't seen anything from the UK government about crypto industry or digital industry per se. And from my quick glance at that new industrial strategy last week, there was nothing in it. So we're just asleep at the wheel again over here.
Well, I'm not gonna be overly defensive of your government because I don't know them that well. But I spent a lot of time in your country, and obviously I'm I'm long a lot of Bitcoin and other crypto assets. They're working on it. They may look more behind than they actually are, because one thing that's happened because of Brexit, they've lost a little bit of financial standing in terms of it being the leading financial capital that it once was. This is a way to get back in there. And so I think you're going to see them follow America's lead, and I think you're going to end up being happy about this. That's a prediction, of course, but that's based on a lot of conversations.
I guess, though, a bit playing devil's advocate here, you would say that, wouldn't you, if you've gone long on this stuff? If you're, deep into Bitcoin, you need this to go well, Anthony, no?
Yeah, but I honestly, no, because I was very critical of the American government during the Biden administration, saying that they was a disaster. But yeah, I mean, I hear you. I mean, I am talking my book, but I always try to disclose to people what I have in my portfolio so that they understand the bias. But yeah, but I do believe what I'm saying. I'm not just talking my book.
Marita, appreciate it as always. Thank you. Dylan's in Stockwell. Dylan.
Hi, good afternoon, gents. Mr. Scaramucci, massive fan as yours. We share a big love of JFK. He was a great president. So my question is, from the outside looking in, as someone who's not America, do you understand why the rest of us in the world kind of look at your country, what's going on, the fact that you re-elected someone so, patently unfit for office. Do you understand why we look at America and just think you're not a serious country anymore?
Yeah, the short answer to that question is yes. Of course, I understand it. And by the way, secondary to that is like heartbreaking. But yes, I do understand that, and it hurts me because the country represented something when I was growing up, and when I was traveling in Europe as a student. The country represented something, and I think we need to rethink that. I think we need to get back to that moment. There's a lot of damage that's happened in this country. There are people in your country that made emotional decisions based on populism. We have the same thing going on here, and we just have to find transformational leadership that can recut the narrative, reframe the direction of the country. We got to heal ourselves on the inside before you guys like us again on the outside. I think that's the brutal reality of it.
Dylan, thank you. Martha asked a question on a not dissimilar theme. Do you think Trump's tendencies are fascistic?
Well, I do, but your British buddies like Caddy Kay and Dominic Sandbrook, they yell at me. They think calling him a fascist is a bridge too far. But I do, because I think, remember, he's constrained by the system. He's constrained not only by the courts, guys. He's actually constrained by the money in politics, because the lobbyists are getting lit up by all these CEOs tell, make Trump stop, go figure it out. But yes, unconstrained, I think he would act way more like a fascist. But I mean, if
so he's a hypothetical fascist.
You guys, you Brits guys go crazy when I use that word. Say it again, Tom.
He's a hypothetical fascist. If there were a world in which he had no constraint, he would act like a fascist.
Yeah, I believe that. Yes, I do believe that.
Can I come back to the money again? You said that he's made billions of dollars through his presidency, or he and his family have made billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
How? And how? How has he been allowed to do that?
So, well, he's technically not allowed to do that. He's in violation of the emoluments clause. He's taking cover saying that his two sons are doing it without him. But I know you're running out of time. If you went to Grok or ChatGPT and you just asked the question, how much money has he and the family made since the inaugural, they'll give you a very big list. And I can tap off a few things. He's got real estate and licensing agreements going on in the Middle East now. He made money off the Melania and the Trump coin. He made money off of something called World Liberty Financial. He got $2 billion infused into World Liberty Financial from the UAE. I can keep going. He's got other ventures. He's selling watches and sneakers and Bibles. He's got an NFT collection that he's put out. He's selling Bibles that have the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in them.
Wow.
Have his name on the Bible. I'm not making this stuff up.
No, sure.
He according to ChatGPT and Grok, that he has grown his net worth by $3 billion in the first 3 months of 2025. And so, again, it's not me saying it. I mean, this is stuff that, this is analytical data from the different things that he has to disclose from his financial disclosures.
Like a buffoon, I've run out of time before I wanted to play you the thing that I wanted to play you, Anthony, which was a clip of President Trump dealing with a question from a journalist called Miroslava Petsa from the BBC Ukrainian service. I don't know whether you saw it. She was at NATO. She's Ukrainian. Her husband is fighting in Ukraine. And she was asking the president about the Patriot missile system and would it be able to go to Ukraine. And he engaged with her in a way I don't think any other politician would have done. He asked her about her husband. He sort of seemed to empathise with her a bit about the situation she was in. And he kind of answered her question pretty directly. And that did remind me that he, despite all of the stuff that you've outlined here and the narcissism and the fascistic tendencies as you describe, he's an incredibly good communicator.
Yeah,
no?
And he's also human. I think somebody asked me a question, well, what do people miss outside the U.S.? He's human. He's got a family. He's human. He can have a conversation with you.
Do you think the shooting changed that? Made it more pronounced?
Maybe. Could have done that. I think again, I think he would be taking a way tougher stance with Vladimir Putin if there wasn't something there, because it makes him look bad. If you look at all the things, what does Trump want to do? He wants to make himself look good. He wants you talking about him. He wants to make himself money. And if you look at his whole mosaic of things that he's doing, there's one little tab in the mosaic, the Putin tab, that makes him look bad. So, look, I don't know. But I don't underestimate him. He's a human being. He's very smart, even though he doesn't speak like he went to Oxford or Cambridge. He's very smart. Don't underestimate him.
Really grateful to you for coming on again.
You look better in that polo than he would. Let me just tell you that, okay?
Well, I haven't
that
found
Marks and Spencer polo of yours, I don't think he could wear it as well as you.
Thanks, man. I need to get your colorist as well, because your hair, there's not a single grey.
Look at Latin American dictator brown, Tommy. Latin American dictator brown. You can come to my colors when you're in New York. I'll set you up.
Well, next time I see you need another guitar. I don't know which band is coming in next, but I'm sure it'll be a good one. Great to see you, Anthony. Thanks for coming on. Anthony Scaramucci, former White House Director of Communications under President Trump. You're listening to Tom Swarbrick on LBC. These are the headlines at 5 o'clock.
That's a governmental overreach thing. If anything, it just creates more bitterness and a greater divide.
Trump's former communications director tells this show revoking the US visas of banned Bob Vylan isn't the right thing to do.
It's been difficult because welfare reform is difficult, but it's also fundamental that we change the system.
Modelling suggests 150,000 people could be pushed into poverty despite the government's welfare U-turn.
We're expecting somewhere to get to 34. We could get to 35.
An amber heat health alert has been extended across England. Temperatures set to reach the mid-30s and...
Any discrimination is concerning. Any form of racism is concerning.
Police say further inquiries are needed into Bob Vylan's performance at Glastonbury, which was live-streamed by the BBC. After the news, why didn't they pull the plug sooner?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and...
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 5 o'clock, a criminal investigation has been opened into chants made by two acts at Glastonbury Festival. Avon and Somerset Police say at this stage they've been recorded as a public order offence. Earlier, the BBC admitted it should have pulled the broadcast of rap duo Bob Vylan. Comments made by Kneecap are also being investigated. The Work and Pensions Secretary has confirmed anyone who's currently receiving personal independence payments won't be affected by changes to the eligibility criteria. Liz Kendall acknowledged real concern among disabled people as she defended the watered-down reforms. They'll cost £2.5 billion by 2030. Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Helen Whately's given her reaction in the Commons.
This is a government in chaos. Open rebellion from their own backbenches, unfunded U-turns costing billions, and welfare plans